So when we look at the nuclear issue, then the Bible says that except those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. I think of that as being to do with Hitler, you know. At the right time, D-Day, 6th of June 44, and that, going into the war to destroy the Hitler. Now, the timing was amazing, and that weather came over the system, and it made them kind of self-confident, thinking that during the war games that they would be safe. But the issue, except those days were shortened. Now, if Hitler had had another couple of years, he already had a New York rocket. He could have sent the nuclear bombs and things to New York and to America if he had had a bit more time. The issue was they already had heavy water, we know about that, and he already had all the stuff to do with nuclear. Now, his point is, right, Iran has just been given 168 billion or something by the Obama administration, yeah? 168 billion. And I mean, North Korea was given a huge handout as well, billions. Now, who are these kings of the East? It's crazy, but America has been given, right, under the stupid regimes, okay? Now, it's crazy, but these billions, Trump has been letting us know about the tomfoolery going on. I mean, it's insane to give these kings of the East the money to get the weapons, the nuclear war, nuclear facilities. I mean, God, they are giving them all the money they require to build up huge, you know, forces. Now, the nuclear issue is not just the spreading of it to other countries is the problem, okay? It's not just that too many nations are getting the bomb. The thing is, right, except those days were short, no flesh should be saved. That's what Jesus said. And I'm convinced that even with Hitler, that had he had a couple more years, the nuclear bomb could have been put on his rockets. Now we know that Hitler's superior weapons were superior. We had nothing that could touch them, okay? Britain was a hopeless case, and so was America. They had nothing, okay? They were completely at the mercy of those machines, okay? And that is a fact. Your little Spitfires were nothing, okay, compared to those jets. But fortunately we had God on our side, which confused the man with headaches. He held back all of his Panzer tanks, listened to stupidity, and he basically kept his aeroplanes, his jet fighters, as bombers. And they were jet fighters, all right. They were like modern superior aircraft. They could outshoot anything we had in the skies. The bombers with their little guns, they couldn't touch them. All they had to do was send them all up at the same time. They'd blast everything out of the sky, nothing could touch them. It was the end of the world, okay, for us. Their Nazi 1,000 years would have lasted. But the Bible says, except for those days were shortened, there is no flesh would have been saved, nothing. Now, when we look at the likes of the Bible, when it says before this generation passes all these things shall be fulfilled, Jesus said 70, 80, 40 years, that's a generation. Just after Jesus died, he said, weep for your children, for your children's children. He said, you know, the death and destruction. When you see Rome and the armies of Rome surrounding Jerusalem, he said, flee to the rocks and the mountains and hills. When you see armies surrounding Jerusalem, he was referring us back to the Old Testament, the abomination of desolation predicted by Daniel, set up. Now, the thing is, the abomination, of course, was the Roman Empire, and it had come into the, in the past, it already come into Jerusalem, and it already, you know, set up the abomination in previous years. So the thing is, we're talking about the Maccabean Wars and all that, but what I'm saying is, this death and destruction from nuclear, okay, it was already dropped on Japan, Nagasaki and all that, and it was a horrible thing. I don't even agree with that. They should never have dropped it on people like that. But people become so hardened and drop so many hundreds of thousands of bombs on cities that they thought nothing of dropping a nuclear bomb on people, on cities. I mean, how horrible that such a thing. So the thing is, if they'd dropped it in the middle of the sea and had warned in advance what it was capable of, and the Japanese spotted it, I mean, already the bombers flew too high for the interception from their fighters. So there was nothing really to be scared of. You know, Enola Gay dropping that bomb. They were flying 40,000, 50,000, whatever foot up in the sky. I mean, anyway, the thing is, what I'm saying is this. If you look at if those days were not shortened. Now, could this be happening with North Korea? You see, if those days were not shortened. Now, Hitler had to be bombed, yeah, and at the right time, because as I said, a couple more years, it would have been too late. It is an idiotic practice of taking charge of the whole country. He was almost blown to pieces, but, you know, cleverly, some person moved the suitcase out of the way, and the oak table got blown up, and the man didn't die. It's just as well, because if the war had carried on with clever generals, and Rommel and all that, had put the tanks along the coast like he wanted to, it would have slaughtered our men before they even got on the beach, okay? Trouble is, the 1,000-year thing would have gone on because, look, those jet fighters, in the right hands, okay, in a capable person, they could have used all of those jet bombers, jet fighters, to blow everything we had in the skies, out the sky. There was nothing could touch them, okay? Nothing. Way too fast. And what I'm saying is that if those days were not shortened, okay, and this could be the thing with North Korea, is they're keep chucking missiles in the sky by accident. See, he may accidentally, one of his stupid missiles might misfire, come down and kill some people, and then that would bring the wrath of the Americans, and they would drop bombs on him, right? Now, the thing is, it might be proportionate to start with, but like I said, you bombed our city and killed 2 people. We'll annihilate and destroy in tens of millions. You know, that's how crazy they are, aren't they? The way they talk, the way they comes across. So if we got all this type of death and destruction, which could happen, if it was done at the right time, maybe, you know, it could be another case of shortening the war, shortening the nuclear war I'm on about, not a war, a nuclear war. But it's a dangerous thing to talk about. Now, history does repeat itself. And if we're talking about an accident like what happened in the Second World War, the accident which produced all of that killings and destroying in cities, that basically accident bombing of a city caused the death and destruction of a lot of people, I think, was it 70,000 or something died in the city of London or something, or 7,000 civilians, I forget how many it was. Civilians died. Now, they were evacuated and left. But the bombing, they said, of the cities turned out to be a good thing, because it meant the airfields weren't being blown up. But I don't think there was anything good about bombing people, innocent civilians. There was enough land to take those aeroplanes, fly them off, and enough fields. And the thing is, if you've got the likes of an accident happening, and then Britain and America bombed Berlin and that, and then we will annihilate them all, destroy all their cities, such as Hitler, you know, ranting and raving, they bomb one of ours, we'll kill thousands of them. Do you know what I mean? It goes on, history repeats itself. The issue is that when it comes to the nuclear bomb, it is so dangerous that when people start dropping nuclear bombs, millions die. Millions and millions. Now, we don't know how many nuclear bombs he's got, but nuclear war is too much of a risk for South Korea. Now, we're in the final generation, I believe, the end of the world. I don't think we've got more than 40 to 50 years left, okay? All the signs are pointing that way. I've shown you that in my previous videos. And the thing is, that being the case, except those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. And the providence of God can alter and change the events upon earth. And God can harden the heart of Pharaoh. He can harden the heart of a leader, or of leaders of a country, and so that they don't listen to anybody, even their friends, and they go it alone and bring death and destruction. But then look what happened when God freed the Israelites with Pharaoh, you know. Death and destruction came on Pharaoh. God hardened his heart. They lost their cattle. They had all kinds of diseases and things, you know, boils and all kinds of lice and flies and death and destruction. The firstborn of every human and the animals died in that. And even the gold they had, which they'd accumulated from Joseph, from when God told Pharaoh how to become rich, you know, through Joseph and the interpretation of the dream. The 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine, they stored it up and became rich as a nation because of Joseph. Well, that gold was given to the Jews on loan when they went out to the wilderness, because they actually thought the slaves would be coming back because there's no food out there. And they actually loaned it all from Egyptians, and well, they took it with them and they didn't come back. So the thing is, what I'm saying is, they were in slavery and they had to make stones but without straw, and the quota wasn't allowed to be slackened off, and God brought them out of there. The trouble is, in North Korea, the people are starving, they're in slavery. I mean, how bad does the situation have to be? And in the Bible it says that bread was thrown over a wall, and they said, throw out that evil king, and they did. I think it was a woman chopped him up and threw his body over the wall, yeah. Anyway, the bread idea worked, and we know about that history repeated. It happened in Spain, if I remember. Bread was given, and the siege ended, and there was a siege, as I said, in the Bible. The idea being that if the people are starved enough, the bread can cure the problem. And if bread is given at the right time to North Korea, if you like, to the people, if they can get some of those nice things which their leaders have got, well, look what could happen. You could have no war, and the people will gain the power. It could happen. And the thing is, that happened in history a number of times. We've seen it happen in Ceausescu. You know, the secret police and all that. Look what happened. You know, they overthrew the government. The army got fed up and shot the secret police. You know? So this situation could happen again. Could even happen in North Korea. It's happened in times past. When the people, look what happened in Scotland in 1560. Right, there was a war which went on, skirmishes and warfare, but what happened is the people spotted the Queen's food in Perth, and everybody was starving hungry, and then they took the food from the Queen and ate it all themselves because they were so hungry. So the Queen said, I'm going to kill every man, woman and child in Perth. So Perth sent out letters to all the surrounding areas, and they fought against the Queen and that. Now, the issue is this, that if the situation was that the French army was thrown out of Scotland, and John Knox called Queen Elizabeth in England to send 10,000 troops up. She did. And they threw the French out. And they threw out the Catholic. And they had a Protestant government. Now, it happens. Life can do that. God can work circumstances and events, adjust, distribute, change about things, so that those days, if they were not shortened, they should no flesh be saved. No flesh, Jesus said. Nothing would exist. He's talking about nuclear warfare, I'm convinced. Because the Old Testament even teaches us in Zechariah that while they stand on their feet, the tongue was consumed in their mouths, and their eyes are consumed in their sockets for going up against Jerusalem. That's the plague on them. And the nuclear does that. It says that Israel would be like God as a nation going out to war, right? And how does that happen? Well, if you look at Israel, okay, with a nuclear bomb, it's like that. And it said even their feeble would be like David as fighters. Machine guns in the hand of feeble old people, young people. I mean, they become huge, like a big fighting man, you know, big strong man. We've seen that in all the wars. Now, with the young and the older have been fighting like with Hitler, you know, because they killed off all the fighting men. And they recruited all the old and the young. But we saw how effective they were when they were given machine guns and those, you know, bazookas. Anyway, the thing is, what we're talking about is that if you look at those days, if they were not shortened, no flesh would be saved. In the time of Hitler, it can be now. This is how dangerous it is, the days we live in. It could be like that now with this North Korea. But what I don't like is that North Korea and Iran are probably helping each other to get the nuclear rockets, nuclear bombs. And if that is the case, that they're helping each other, the danger is that nuclear bombs could be dropped on cities. And if that's the case, you know, it could be the end of the world. The Bible says the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved. That's the Greek, from the Greek now. 2 Peter chapter 3. And if that's the case, the other Bible verse which says there shall be fearful sights, wonders in the heavens above. It's talking nuclear stuff to me. God, who made the atom, knew that knowledge would be increased, that man could split the atom. And if God knows that man could split the atom, he knew that the potential for the death and destruction of this planet was capable. And there's other Bible passages and verses which talks about, you know, they spat out fire, brimstone and smoke with these flying creatures which had wings and a face of a man in it. Revelation chapter 9 and verse 15 and so on, and verse 1 right through. Spitting out fire, brimstone and smoke. Now that particular winged thing was to last for 150 days or 150 years. And the other time zone, which I see, there's 200 million dead, yeah, verse 16 chapter 9. And they also have another number there of a time of an hour, a day, a month and a year, which is 367 days. But remember, a day is a year. Ezekiel 4 verse 6, prophetical year that is. So 376 days is 376 years. When the preparation of these things were to be made. And the only conclusion I could find really was, I mean there was two conclusions. The one was Oliver Cromwell. From him it takes up to 2019 to 2022. Okay? From the war which killed 85,000, possibly 200,000. Now that being the case, then we're talking about somewhere in the region of another 30,000 dead, another 300,000 dead, another 3 million dead, another 30 million dead, another 71 million dead. I mean, it's unbelievable. 129 million have already died, right? In the last 103 years, since the First World War. That's in wars now. 129 million dead, and it says 200 million were involved in deaths. If that's the case, 200 million, there's 71 million shortfall somewhere, isn't there? Does that mean 71 million must die over the next generation, 40 years? If you include the 150 days, it's 150 years of spitting up fire, brimstone and smoke with those winged creatures which had made the noise of many chariots, had the face of a man in it, spat out fire, brimstone and smoke, and they had wings. Read it yourself, it's there. The time we're given, remember. When you have 70 weeks in Daniel, it means 480 days, it means 480 years from the time of Artaxerxes, okay, the building of the wall of Jerusalem, to the time of Jesus being cut off. Exactly a day, an hour, a month, a year was given, predicted, and it happened, right? So I'm just saying, one day is a year. So 376, add it up. Now, you might say, well, what about the date when it says from